There are so many FX waxes on the market. Mehron alone has a handful of them, and honestly, I don't even know the difference between them. So I bought them. Now let's compare them. Now all of these do recommend that you use spirit gum to prep the skin, and this is gonna give it a longer hold, but we're just playing with these, so we're not gonna have anything on the skin. I'm also curious of how easy it will be to get the wax to grab onto the skin without the glue there. Let's start with the most unique one. Mehron Extra Splash. Okay, this one is kind of cool. So those lumps you're seeing are what they describe as fibrous material, which is already going to give us a more unique texture than just regular wax. It only comes in this one color. According to the directions, you do not need to warm it up. You can just go right from the pot and start working. This stuff is so soft and almost stringy because of those fibers. It's a really strange consistency for a wax. Since it is so soft and super sticky, it grabs on the skin no problem. And it's really easy to blend down. Mineral oil did make it easier to get it even more smooth. For those of you who don't know, mineral oil is a great way to keep your fingers or spatula from sticking to the wax while you're trying to blend. But be sure not to go overboard. You don't want to get a whole oily mess. And if you do find that you put a little too much oil, you could just blot that up. It just helps it glide and will help you blend thinner edges. This stuff is really easy to carve into. And I'm able to get some nice fine textures with my red sponge. But I could definitely see using this to build up some really weird, quick textures. You could make a really cool zombie look crazy fast with this stuff. Just be warned, with this consistency and having those fibers, while carving it, you may accidentally pull those fibers up and this might happen. But luckily, this stuff is so easy to manipulate and you can fix it in no time. As far as the color, this is pretty much your generic wax tone. Unless you have very fair skin, you are going to have to paint it to make it match. Though I do like that the color of this wax isn't very opaque, so you won't have any harsh lines from the wax to the skin transition, which is gonna make it easier to paint it out and blend. Now, this wax does not dry or harden, so it will stay that soft. I'm definitely less likely to use this in a high movement area, since you could definitely accidentally smash down all your work. Professional Molding Putty Wax. This one is described as a pliable combination of traditional putty and modeling wax. This feels more like traditional wax and other brands. You do want to warm this up before you start working with it. As you work it, you'll see it starts to get softer and stickier. Here you can even see it's starting to stick to my fingers. Now this is more rigid than the Extra Flesh. Once it's warmed up, it goes on nice and easy. If you tried this one but found it was hard to get it to stick or blend, you may have not have worked the wax enough before starting your buildup. You definitely want to take the time to soften it. I did use a little mineral oil on the spatula to finish blending. Just using the same sponge technique. It takes the texture, but you will have to press a little harder than with the Extra Flesh. Now, my biggest complaint with this one, I am not a huge fan of this color. It makes sense for inside of a wound or like something meaty, but it is so pigmented. And that opacity just means you're gonna have more to paint to blend it into skin tone. And yes, one could argue that the warm color is actually a good base to start a skin tone on top of, or even using it as a healing scar tissue where you only paint it lightly and not fully cover that color. Now, if you're not that confident in painting skin tones, or it's just something you don't want to spend a lot of time doing when creating a makeup, this is something you just might want to keep in mind when choosing a formula to use. That aside, I do like the firmness of this wax. As far as areas of movement, I think it's going to hold up quite well. You won't accidentally be smashing what you created. Out of all these waxes, this is the only one I've actually created a look with. And it's quite clear that it's got the best packaging. This wax is very hard. You can see even trying to take it out of the container, I'm getting just little chunks at a time. You definitely need to knead this and warm it up and soften it. Don't just squish it a couple times and go to use it. If you start using it too soon, it is not gonna stick and it is not gonna blend well. But once you've properly worked it, you can see how soft and sticky it's gotten, making it much easier to work with. Little mineral oil to help smoothing. This one is harder than the previous putty formula, so I did have to press even a little harder to get some of that skin texture in there with the sponge. I found it was better to push down and create the shape of the wound instead of just taking the spatula and dragging it across that wax. Now, this would actually be at the bottom of my list for recommending for beginners, only because you really have to knead it and work it to get into that usable consistency. And I know some people are looking more for a formula that they can just grab and go and just start having fun. I want it now! Now, for the people that the wax working time isn't a deterrent, I will say, because it is on the firmer side, this is gonna be really good for larger buildups and durability in those. The biggest bonus, and one of the reasons I love this formula, is the color. It is so translucent and you don't get those harsh color lines. So I find that it makes it more versatile, especially in a kit where you're going to encounter different skin tones. The more translucent ones are just gonna make it so much easier to paint in the end. You're not gonna find yourself fighting to cover it. Say like the Putty wax color. Here's an example of what I mean with the harsh line from the wax to the skin. Even though neither of these waxes match the skin tone, you can see that translucency actually helps it to blend into the skin already even before any paint. This is the exact same reason why some people tend to favor silicone prosthetics over foam latex. There's usually less of a color variation from the piece to the skin, making it way easier to paint, especially when dealing with realistic skin tones. So if you're willing to get the wax warmed and really get it into that perfect working consistency, this one will definitely make your painting a lot faster. Now, the Mehron Scar Wax is the newest one in the line. It's described as being great for beginners. That's probably also why it's the only one with the unique feature of coming in skin tones, making it easier to just match the skin right off the bat. I got medium, which you can see is a little too dark for me. Don't forget, you can take multiple ones and mix them to get a better skin tone match to your needs. Now, you don't need to warm this product when you're applying it. I did play with it with my fingers a little bit, and as you can see, it already just wanted to grab onto my finger. So this stuff is seriously just ready to work. It isn't as opaque as the Putty, so that's great. It's nice and soft and easy to blend. I can definitely agree this is beginner friendly. Now, if you never played with wax or you just weren't a fan of it the last time you tried it and was hoping to find an easier one to work with, this one's a great formula. Plus, because it comes in the flesh tone range, it can cut down on having to paint that blend. It has those durability qualities of the Putty and the SynWax, but Mehron was able to eliminate that step of having to soften the wax before it's ready to work with. Now, with all of these wax formulas, gonna wanna paint them. So you saw 3 out of the 4 packagings did come with a small vial of Fixative A. This is used to seal your wax and prep it for paint. But don't worry, if you got a different packaging of wax and you didn't get this Fixative A, you can use liquid latex. Plus, the latex will even help you blend those edges a little better if you're not 100% happy with them. Throw a little skin illustrator over top, and as you can see, you can still blend all of these into the skin tone, no matter what the original color was. Some bruising and drying blood. All 4 of these are gonna give you a great effect. The one thing that always makes an FX look better is texture. So click the next video to find out about some specialty sponges that you might wanna start keeping in your FX kit.